Morning. It is September 6th, 2022. Thank you for joining us today for Mortgage Pros 411. We have Kevin Casey and Dave Stevens with us today. I'm Audrey Boisno, and thank you so much for being here. Kevin, do you want to lead off the charge on what's going on around the country?
Yeah, we got some interesting events for mortgage associations coming up. We have in Utah on the 9th, it's only a few days from now, if you can find your way over there. They have their annual mortgage expo at the Marriott in Center City, or City Center, no, City Creek, that's what it is. We went there last year. Remember, Audrey? It was a good event. They had several hundred people there, several hundred vendors, good topics.
Yeah, and lots of TVs. If there's one
TVs.
thing that we learned about Utah, they
like their big screen
little ones,
TVs.
big ones, everything in between. It was the most remarkable thing I've ever seen.
They gave away like 13 TVs, big screen TVs.
God, it was ridiculous.
Everyone's just walking out with a big screen TV.
Yeah, it was unbelievable.
Amazing.
Also on the 9th, which is on Friday, I will, and I think Kevin might be joining me, be teaching NMLS live in the North Bay. So if you are looking to do your NMLS training, that is coming up on Friday. Oh, and then before that, September 7th, we have OC Sola has Dave Luna teaching online. And then on October 13th and 17th, I'll be doing NMLS online for OC Sola. And then September 15th, they have their Top Golf event in El Segundo, wherever that is, down south somewhere. Assuming we haven't all, burst into flames and disappeared from the face of the earth. It's so freaking hot here. So with that, is that everything, Kevin? Do you have any other?
No, we missed, so last second ad was on Friday. We decided to have a class in the San Francisco Peninsula, and it's going to be in the Sausalito Yacht Club on Monday, September 12th, live in-person class. Amazing views from that venue. So, if the class gets boring, you just kind of steer your head around like, come look at that view of the city. So
how could NMLS training ever get boring? Okay, with that being said, let's get going. So we have David H. Stevens with us today. Very important to include the H, because did you know there's a loan officer in the middle of the country somewhere also named Dave Stevens? I'd like to be him. With, just like take a little coattail ride on, what you have done before him. And yeah, what do you think? So welcome, Dave. It's nice to have you here. Oh, we can't hear you. Oh, you're muted. Hello. Unmute yourself.
There we go. Good to be
That's a simple one.
It's almost like you've never done a Zoom thing before. It's weird.
I know, it's horrible.
Thank you for joining us. Dave is the past president or CEO of the MBA, Mortgage Bankers Association. He also served as U.S. Assistant Secretary of Housing and FHA Commissioner at HUD, and so many other roles. I did not realize you had started, well, I don't know, started is the word, but you were at World for a long time. You were at Wells Fargo. You have served on both sides of this industry, both as a loan officer and on the mortgage banker side, and then big time into the legislative part of what impacts us every day. So,
and I think if I remember right, you advised some high up person, like maybe a U.S. president or something, somewhere along the line during some crisis of some sort.
You don't have
I can't.
That's right.
When that could have happened.
Yeah, it's an interesting history how you can start selling NEGAM loans and end up being part of the president's team. So,
well, I would say that all that experience actually is wonderful, not just for, the mortgage industry as a whole, but for us today, because you have such an interesting insight on both ends of, or all areas mortgage. We're looking forward to hearing what you have to say today on what is happening, what's coming up, etc. So let's get going. Let's talk about the market, Dave. Where would you like to start on this?
Well, God, you guys, there's a ton of stuff we could be talking about. And let me just start with the basics. This is faded in the background is Diana Olick, from CNBC.
Yeah, she's such a charmer.
I really think it's important not to get wrapped up too much in the negativity. I mean, if you listen to what I mean, Diana's the lead housing expert on CNBC, the business news channel. And if you had followed any of her headline recommendations, like home ownership doesn't build wealth, or it's better to rent than to buy in today's housing market, that she said in 2018, people would have lost a ton of money. And I think, you know, let's just go through the reality of where we're at. In fact, maybe there's one.
We talk about this a
Yeah,
lot on here, that
yeah.
you do not follow the headlines. You have
Well,
to.
the other thing I've come to learn is whatever she says, do the opposite. You're going to do really well.
Yeah. So let me show you this one slide. So this is a history of mortgage volumes in the U.S. with a forecast for the next couple of years from the chief economist at the MBA. And guys, what I want to highlight for all of you is, you know, what's making the industry market painful right now is if you look at 2020 and 2021, the yellow bars are refi, the green bars are purchase, and the gray line is total volume. So refi and purchase combined. Obviously, 2020 and 2021 were the two biggest years in mortgage history in the United States, both over $4 trillion. And we're dropping down this year to an expected $2.3 trillion and roughly staying at that level for the next couple of years. And it's that contraction that's happening. But I want to have you go to look at the left side of this graph of this chart and go back to 2003. That prior to 2020 and 2021, that was the biggest mortgage year in American history at $3.8 trillion. From 2003 to 2008, the market contracted down to about $1.5 trillion. So far more than 50% contraction, really about a 65% contraction in total mortgage volume. But for anybody who was in the business from 2010, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, two things to note, right? Overall mortgage volume, the gray line, was lower than we're going to do this year, next year, and the following, right? Mm-hmm. It was in the $1.5 to $2 trillion range. And in those years, if you were in the business, you remember, we made good money. There was margin. We were making good income. We boomed, obviously, in 2021. What crushes margins is the period while you're contracting. So from 2003 into 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, the industry contracted. And as a result, we ended up with a right-sized industry for the Great Recession, the biggest housing recession in American history, which hit us in 2008. And for those subsequent years, even though we were in actually what was considered to be a very difficult market with low volumes and not a lot of purchase activity, we made good margin in the industry. So juxtapose that to where we are today. We're coming off of two $4 trillion years. We're going to do 2.3 this year and roughly the same the next couple of years. Better years than any of that decade before, any of those years. And yet we're feeling like mega pain. Why? Because we haven't right-sized. This quote at the bottom is from a Housing Wire piece that came out late last week, written by the chief economist at the MBA. But it said, based on our back of the envelope analysis here, if the industry experiences a 65% drop in loan origination volume from the peak in fourth quarter 2020 to a trough in first quarter 2023 per MBA's forecast, and I want to talk about that in just a moment, production employment will likely need to be scaled by 24 to 31%. So production employment, meaning us, loan officers, has to be scaled by 24 to 31%. But as of second quarter 22, we're only between 2 and 10%. So we're in this right sizing period, but unfortunately, we're not quite there yet. We have a lot of work to do. And so I want to tell you guys, as you go through the winter here, and I'm fortunate that when I started as an LO in 83, my fixed rate was 16.5 with, I think, 2 points. And that was about the best rate. There were no refis, there were no cash out refis. There were no rate and term refis. There were no refis, period. It was purchase only because no one was getting a loan at 16.5%. Mm-hmm. And the purchase market was pretty bad and everybody thought the market sucked. I didn't know better. I had been selling office equipment, making 30 cold calls every day And I joined World Savings and just went out and started making cold calls on real estate agents, getting rejected left and right. But that didn't bother me because having sold office equipment where you go out and make 30 cold calls every day and you have to turn in a post call report to your sales manager every afternoon, you got kicked out of 90% of the offices. You had people escort you out of office buildings because they didn't allow solicitors and things of that sort. Mortgages were nothing. Going and calling on realtors who weren't that sophisticated, no offense, in my view, and getting rejected here and there was nothing because everybody else was too afraid to do that. No one had even learned selling skills in the mortgage industry. So I'm fortunate that I benefited by starting in a really tough market. Like I think anybody who starts right now who didn't live through the last 2 years, they couldn't be starting at a better time because we're going to have a great market in purchases for the next 10 years. I'll show you why in just a second.
Mhm.
But what we're all doing is we're licking our wounds because 6%, oh my God, it's a terrible rate, even though it's like near historic lows for interest rates. Because we lost 3%, we lost refinances, and unfortunately, we're all about to head into the slow season because, as you guys all know, it can be pouring rain and ice cold in San Francisco, and or put a better way, you could be, it can be in the middle of winter. But if rates are dropped to 2 3/4, you're going to get a bunch of loan apps to do refis. Purchases don't work that way. Purchases are cyclical. Because we're in a purchase market, other than some cash out refis, you're going to see purchases slow through the winter. And if you looked at that article Fratantoni wrote in Housing Wire last week, the one I just quoted from, he thinks we're going to have the low trough in Q1 of next year. So this is going to be a rough winter while the industry is going through that right sizing, but I can assure you it will right size. It is doing it now. We're seeing lenders close doors left and right or shut down wholesale channels or whatever the heck they're doing. And we're all going to end up in a better place because the retail focused, non-internet based, non-call center based loan officer is the survival business model. And that's what really all of you folks are on this Zoom call. So I just think, it's going to be a tough winter, but we've got to stop licking our wounds and go out and just start selling more aggressively because, that's the core component. Let me show you one more.
Okay.
This is from Fred, the Federal Reserve site. I hope all of you go there a lot because this is the Federal Reserve of St. Louis. It's called Fred. They are the data hounds for all of the Federal Reserve System. They have a ton of housing data. This is one you can pull up, any month here or there. This is the 30-year fixed rate mortgage average in the United States. You can see they've obviously risen since last month's number was produced, but I don't think they're going to stay at 6 in that range. I think we're going to scale back down into the high 4s or low 5s next year. But nevertheless, just look at the perspective here.
Yes.
If you look at where rates are today compared to any time going back to the 70s, we are enjoying some of the best interest rates we've ever seen in our lives. And the only time they were lower, let me just get through this and I'll shut up and shut the screen. Anytime they were lower is that blue section, which was either the Great Recession of 08, 9, 10, 11, 12, which was 3 rounds of quantitative easing, or the great pandemic of 2020 when the Fed really came in and drove rates low. And that's the only time we've seen rates this low. That's just not going to happen. That was the 2 biggest, century-long lifetime recessions since the Great Depression, where the Fed intervened in the most dramatic way. 6% is freaking awesome. Put that in your head and start saying it every morning. When
I keep telling people all the time, historically, 6% was when you had a refinance boom.
Yeah.
Damn,
and
the other thing too is,
I remember when 9 was a time to open champagne bottles.
Yeah. Yeah, I do too. But the other thing too is, the Fed doesn't need to stimulate the economy with low rates anymore. The economy is doing fine without stimulating it with low rates. And all we're doing is taking out the stimulations.
We're doing more than taking out the stimulations, Kevin. We're intentionally slowing the economy because it's too hot.
Right.
And housing's 30% of the economy. The Fed knows if it doesn't slow housing, it can't slow anything else.
So there are a few things then in what you were saying that are so important. First of all, I love that slide, and I wish I'd had it on Sunday when I met the young couple. So I was telling Dave earlier today, I was at an event on Sunday, and I overhear this couple talk about, oh, we went and saw this house, we saw this house, and we're really excited. And I turn around and invited myself into their conversation, shocker. And I literally said, I'm going to ask you some questions. You don't have to answer them, but I asked them how old they were. She was 29, he was 38. They had a little baby in a baby carrier with them, and they are looking. And so I asked them, I said, are you looking for the first time? Were you looking through the crazy? Or did you just start? They just started looking. They weren't looking before because there was too much competition. They get it that now there isn't. And they said, they made the comment that rates are horrible, but we can refinance later. And again, so I said to them, I said, first of all, I just want to say you're really smart, because you always want to buy when other people are afraid to. And secondly, the rates are great, historically speaking. And as long as you're getting a loan that you can afford to pay, no matter whether you can refinance or not, you'll be in good shape. So they were very happy with that. And Dave, can we get a copy of the chart that we can send out to people? And I had read the MBA's thing too, which is awesome. But if you could share that with us and we could share that with everyone, that'd be lovely.
I won't share the MBA article. You can get it off the Housing Wire.
Yeah.
But what I'll do, Audrey, is I'm going to send you a PowerPoint deck that I was going to do today. This is an easier way to do it, but it has these slides and other ones in it.
Beautiful.
And so you can feel free to use whatever you want from that.
Okay.
Let me transition. I know I always love the yeah buts, and I know there's one here, and it's a good point. I mean, home prices and rates make up payment, but also keep in mind we have massive wage inflation. We are really not in any sort of bubble that you could possibly create in your own mind. And there's no economist in America who thinks we're a real economist who thinks we're in a housing bubble. Let me just share with you, these are two slides from two different economists done in two different presentations. And I just want to show you both. And Audrey and I were talking about this a little while ago. This is demographically speaking, this is the total population of the United States from age 0 to 100, okay? As of the June 2020 census. This one over here is the 2022 census. I'll show you that in a moment. It's a 2022 census estimate, but this is the 2020 census. This is a presentation from a think tank in Washington called the Public Policy Institute. But as you can see, the source at the bottom is the Census Bureau Population Division. And this is their slide. I didn't touch this thing. All they did is they highlighted all the yellow bars here. And if you look at the first call out on the right of the yellow bars, it says median age for first-time home buyer is age 34, all right? So that's a bullet point that every economist knows. The Federal Reserve actually publishes that number. It's the median age for first-time home buyers in the United States right now is age 34. NAR knows it, NAHB, the home builders know it, the MBA knows it, politicians know it, policymakers know it. It's an important year. That's the year that the majority of Americans, or it's a median year age for home buyers to buy a home. If you look to the left of that yellow bar, so that's a population of 8 people age 34, right where that arrow sits, which is the far right-hand yellow bar. To the left are all the ages coming at us, age 33, 32, 31, 30, 29, 28, 27, 26, 25. Every one of those cohorts, those age cohorts, is bigger than the one we're in. Mm-hmm. In other words, the demographics rolling your way from the biggest generation in history. Look out to the right to the taller blue bars in the early 60s and 50s. This generation is bigger than the baby boom generation, biggest generation in history. And for every progressive year for the next decade, you're going to have more people than this year reaching their peak first-time home buyer year. So this is why you can't get in you can't argue your way out of why there's going to be continued purchase growth and why everybody's forecast for purchase activity over the next several years is stable or increasing. People ask, what happened in 2008 then? What was going on? Well, 2008, we're in 2022. That was 14 years ago. So if you take the 34-year-old of today, that would put him at 48 years old. Go out to the blue bars near 45, 47. See those cohorts? That was Gen X. We actually had a huge lack of demand because we didn't have enough people in the population who were in the right years to go buy homes. In fact, Gen X was a smaller generation sandwiched between baby boomers and millennials. And millennials 14 years ago were in college and high school. They were living at home. In fact, this chart shows in Public Policy Institute, the median age for moving out is age 26. Moving out, economically speaking, means you're no longer a tax deduction for your parents. You're not living with them, you're not in college, or they're not paying your rent. So the median age for moving out is age 26. And that's where millennials were when the Great Recession hit of 2008. And we had no demand. We had a lack of demand. We were losing 600,000 households per month under the household formation data during those years. We were losing household formation, not even increasing.
And we had no jobs, and we had no equity, and we had no ATR,
we also,
right?
Yeah, because we had a credit bubble that also, not on top of that, was doing NEGAM, 100%, fog the mirror, no docs. You know,
Right.
I mean, it was a different market. Today we have QM, as you
ATR,
know.
love ATR.
We have ability to repay rules across the country.
Yep.
And while there's some non-QM stuff, as you all know, it's small and it still has to meet the ATR standard in case they're dragged into court. So this chart, I just want to show it to you. It's another economist. I got a million of these because every economist uses their own version in their current presentations. But why this one is important, look at the date. It's population estimate by single age cohort in 2022. So it's the freshest of data. It's done by Moody's Analytics. You can see the source down below. And it's a presentation that Professor Mark Zandi, who's the chief economist of Moody's, the massive global ratings agency, recently did. And look what he did. He circled the same cohort bars. Everybody knows the story here. And people can't get out of their own way because they want to find a reason to bitch about it. I mean, here's just, I'm just going to stop. Here's just two more. Here's Realtor.com is using the same chart. And then there's a million articles. Barron's, Dana Peterson, who's their chief economist, does a lot of great articles for Barron's. Millennials will drive home prices up for years. And in the deck that I'll send you, Audrey, that you can share with anybody who wants it, who's on this call, has a bunch of other headline articles that say the exact same thing. The Economist, a great story in The Economist, saying, you know, you're expecting a correction, don't bet on that. And it goes through, guess what? Demographics, housing supply, which we're short. I was going to show another chart. I won't kill you with charts, but
People love
we are
charts,
short.
Dave.
We are short 2 million homes in the country right now, based on demand. And make no mistake about it, guys. If people think renting's a better choice, you know, they gotta take some meds because it isn't. And I'm going to show you a series here, but let me just start with this simple one. This is from the Survey of Consumer Finances from the Federal Reserve. And all it looks is at median net worth of all Americans based on tax data. All right, it's published by the Federal Reserve's Consumer Finance Division. The bluish gray line is those that own homes, homeowners, and the green line along the bottom are renters. There's no wealth creation if you're a renter. And this line, the reason why I like this chart is look between 2007 and 2010. Yes, net worth dropped, but it was still massively higher than if you were a renter. There's another way of looking at it, and I'm just going to give you one other view. This is from the Survey of Consumer Finances again. It just takes it by income category. And it's a little detailed because The orange is housing wealth. The green is rent wealth. That's the green. It's the right side of the bars on each income category. And then the blue is other owner non-housing wealth. So in other words, the richer you get from a salary standpoint, the more likely you are to be in 401ks or invested in the stock market or whatever else. That's why you see for over 192,000, which obviously means that can take you up to millions of dollars of income a year, whatever it is over 192, you've got a lot of money in the stock market. But the single biggest wealth creator, period, is owning a home. And renters, even rich people who rent, don't have the wealth of owners because all they have is a stock market and they're paying somebody else's mortgage. So, my view of all of this is, look, it's going to be a tough winter. Rates are at 6, get over it, stop whining, get to work, go get rejected, but don't go out selling rates. I mean, don't go out there leading with, I got a great 2-1 buy down, or I can do this non-QM bank statement loan, or I got a great 7 or 10 if it's a jumbo bar, or whatever it is that you're pitching right now to give yourself some differentiation in the market. You can't differentiate yourself. Everybody's got the same stuff.
Mhm.
And so it's good to have that, but go out and lead with information. Consumers, realtors, your referral partners, they buy ideas. They don't buy stuff. And stuff to me is rates and rate sheets. When you go out and present and you do your coffee luncheons, or you get someone to meet you for a beer, or you do an ad hoc drop in on a real estate office, God forbid, or a home builder, go in with information like this. And all you have to do is try a little sales. I learned this in my office equipment days. You start off with initial benefit statement. Hey, I've got a really interesting idea that I think can help you increase your business. And then you just say, it'll only take a few minutes to show it to you. Don't ever sell on the phone or sell in a Zoom call unless you absolutely have to. And then do a closing for time. I'd really like to meet with you to go over it. It'll absolutely help you with your business. And then an alternative of choice close, right? Look, today it's Tuesday afternoon. How does Thursday morning look for you? Or I could do Friday afternoon, which is better. Boom. It sounds salesy, but it's not. It's conversational. Get in front of a consumer, a referral partner for you, a real estate agent, home builder, financial planner, whatever it is that your source, and tell them that you can help give them ideas to motivate potential home buyers as to why they better not sit their ass on the sidelines, because home prices are going to continue appreciating. You got a huge swell of demand coming your way in the marketplace. Interest rates are at near historic lows. This is not like any other economy you have ever been through. Now, the reason why things feel scary to you is I don't know. The economy is on fire. Unemployment rate is 3.4. There's too much inflation because everybody's spending money. And for you to sit on the sidelines, you'll never build yourself wealth, because wealth creation comes from home ownership. So
I just want to go back to, you had, in an interview you did earlier this year, you cited a Department of Labor statistics number where you were showing that the average homeowner had $250,000 in net worth. The average renter has about $1,200. And actually it was a conversation in my family this weekend where they were saying that 57% of Americans can't afford a $500 crisis in their life without having a big problem. So again, to your point, homeownership is the key. Also, to your point, we have been talking about this literally since we ever started doing this in lockdown in March of 2020. You have to get up in the morning, take a shower, put on some clothes that don't stretch, and get out of your house. So I think that we have an entire group of people who think that the loan business is conducted from their desks in their house. They never have to leave. You never have to go talk to a person. And that is not reality. You are no better than some call center at some crappy, place that's national, if that's all you're doing. So to your point, Dave, it's so important. We cannot overemphasize it. Get out and do something. You have to get out of your house. You cannot just sit around processing loans.
So, I mean, look, information is everywhere. It's just about your ability to mine.
Yep.
Everything I'm showing you is free and available on the internet. This is something called the State of the Nation's Housing. You see it referenced at the bottom, 2022, was published in June. This is from the Harvard Joint Center for Housing Studies. So you see source, JCHS, that's the Joint Center for Housing Studies. It's part of the Kennedy School at Harvard University in Massachusetts. And they put out a research report every summer. They're a huge policy think tank. What they look at here is their headline is, even if they own homes, Black and Hispanic households have significantly less wealth than white homeowners. I get that. White non-Hispanics are wealthier. Latinos and African Americans are less wealthy. That's a generational challenge. But one of the biggest hurdles here, and this is why Harvard's looking at this so closely, is that getting on the rung of housing is how you build intergenerational wealth. This is why Bank of America came out with that census tract program that they just announced with no down payment requirement. It's really targeted towards African Americans and Hispanics, because they know if you can get someone on the rung of home ownership, they begin to build intergenerational wealth. Whites just had access to homes in this country before African Americans did. Hell, we didn't even have the Civil Rights Act passed until 1965. So, I mean, you got to just think about the history of our country and why that separation is. But when you talk about opportunity, what policymakers are looking at right now is we got to find a way to help Blacks and Hispanics buy homes, because that's how they build wealth. And what this shows is, if you look at net worth versus for renters versus owners, or just look at all races and ethnicities on the far right, homeowners have significantly greater wealth by multiples over renters. And what this is trying to tell you, if this is trying to tell policymakers, get people into home ownership, particularly African Americans and Hispanics, which is where a lot of Washington policy is focused today. The inverse relationship of that statement is, that means obviously that owning a home is the most important way to build wealth. I've just shown you 3 different slides about where wealth is created in this country by income bracket, by just across the median of all incomes, and by ethnicity. It doesn't matter. And so we need to be taking that roadshow to our referral partners, because
100%.
I can tell you, I did a presentation about a month and a half ago to a Compass. Do you have Compass out there?
Oh, yeah.
It was to a Compass real estate office in Washington, D.C. And the manager there, she had the marketing manager from Compass in New York listening in. Next thing you know, I got a call asking if I could do this for all of Compass. Since then, I've had 6 different offices asking me, Compass in the system around the country, hey, can we do a Zoom call with you one more time just to go through that again? Realtors are starving for something positive to use in their marketplace. And I assure you, whatever your rate is on your 7-1 ARM isn't what they're looking for. They're looking for what I'm showing. They just can't get enough of it. And I wish I could show you my whole screen. I have nothing but data slides sitting in my files, because I will pull them together. Tomorrow, I'm doing a presentation for one of the largest home builders of the country. Not the mortgage company of the builder, the builders. They're building sites. They're all going to call in on a big joint Zoom call from all their little call centers in their building sites from all around the country. I do this with them twice a year. This is my fall version that I'm doing for them again. I'm telling you, builders, I'm sure many of you have builder clients that you work with. They sit alone in a site. They rarely have a sales meeting. They don't get any training about how to sell, good information to use. And they're just getting the same crap on the news that we're all getting every day, scaring the living daylights out of America into believing something that is just flat out not true. I mean, it's not true.
It's scary. I was driving around this neighborhood, and it's up in the Oakland Hills.
Randomly.
And I was noticing how many construction projects were on hold, like just stopped. And there was a dozen of them I passed by, and just randomly. And it was just like, builders are freaking out that, oh no, we don't want to, move ahead because things are costing too much and we won't recap our money. And then that's just going to make things worse. It's actually makes more sense.
Well,
now.
what's interesting, Kevin, I saw this Moody's economist, Professor Mark Zandi, who's actually become a very good friend. I never call him professor to his face, but he just gives him more cred when I'm doing it in a presentation. But in his presentation, I used one of the slides, but in that same presentation, I have his whole deck. He talked about actually it's a good thing that builders are slowing up the supply side, because what happened in the '08 crisis, if you remember, we were all in the business back then. '03 was that massive year, biggest year prior to 2020. '05 was actually the biggest purchase year prior to 2020 in American history. But home builders were building tons of spec. And so when the market crashed in '08, we had a supply problem, and average home prices in America dropped 20% from peak to trough. It also was contributed by an excess supply on new build. And so actually the good news is home builders don't have an excess inventory problem right now. But some do, pockets of it, but it's a few homes here and there. It's not on macro scale, it's nothing. Hey, before we can go to Q&A or do whatever you want, Audrey, with this, but let me just do one last thing. This is a fresh presentation from the mortgage bankers. Came out on the 22nd. It's their forecast. Now, I have another slide that shows Fannie, Freddie, and the MBA all next to each other, all their forecasts. I can assure you that Mike Fratantoni from the MBA, he's been more, he's conservative. He's not anywhere near as enthusiastic as Duncan from Fannie Mae in terms of volume expectations. But I just want to highlight a few things on this chart, okay? So look at the mortgage originations, look at purchase. So you look at total 1 to 4 family in billions, look at purchase, follow your eyes across to the right. This year, we're forecasted to do about $1.6 trillion in mortgages. You see that in 2022, actually a little less than last year. Next year, 1.7, year following 1.8. And that's with rates sitting somewhere in the mid 4s to mid 5s during each of those years. Now, how can Fratantoni think that rates are going to stay up at this level, rough range, and we're still going to have increased sales activity? What does he know, and all the other economists know, that the average naysayer doesn't? Demographics, man. You know, demographics, supply of homes. You cannot stop the math of that reality. And you guys know what's going on in the rental market. Anybody who thinks renting is a panacea is full of it. I'm on the East Coast. Excuse my language. I was born in New York City. So this is just the way we communicate. But I will tell you this, rents, no matter where you go in any market, and you know this being in the Bay Area, they're going through the roof. Why? Because that demographic chart is indiscriminate, right? They're going to live somewhere. All those bars in the 30s, those cohorts we're talking about, the millennials, they're not going to, these aren't basement kids. These guys all have jobs because we're at full employment. There's no way in hell they want to live with their parents like they did during the Great Recession, because they only do that if they absolutely have to. Trust me, I have 4 adults. I know that firsthand. And if they don't buy, they're going to rent. And because many are deferring the decision to buy, the rental demand is through the roof, and that's not going to abate itself anytime over the next several years. So, housing is like a balloon. You squeeze one side to shrink it and the other side expands, because the population numbers are not going to change and these cohorts are coming at us. There's absolutely no doubt when you look at forecasts for home price appreciation being in the low single digits, that we're going to do better by performance from an economic return standpoint by buying than you could ever envision by renting. And I won't, last point, you're gonna have to cut me off here.
You're good, you're good.
But don't forget the fundamentals about the investment of real estate, right? I mean, I'll give you a simple one, a $400,000 home, which you cannot buy in the Bay Area, but maybe up in Northern Cal or Oregon.
You get a condo, a little tiny place,
or East Bay. My sister lives out in Ahwahnee near Corscold, near Yosemite. But if you buy 400,
that's like you cannot commute anywhere significant from there. But go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you got to. It doesn't matter the number. $400,000 home. People think, okay, so 2% return on $400,000. That's a really low return. It's not worth my time. forget that. Your investment into that home, if it's a 10% down payment, is 40 grand. If that appreciates 2%, that's $8,000 on a $40,000 investment. It's a 25% annual return. That's real dollars. That's not making things up. And so these are the things that people just, we as loan officers, we have to know this stuff. We have to internalize the numbers. I'm not even selling mortgages anymore, and I have it all internalized. You guys got to internalize the numbers. I even say with zero appreciation, zero, MID alone, even capped MID, is still a massively better return than almost any investment you could possibly make. Why? Because if you're in a 30% tax bracket, you're getting 30% of that interest that you're paying up to the cap. I understand.
Explain MID, Dave. MID, explain it.
Mortgage interest deduction. I hope you all know what that means.
Not everyone's going to get the acronym, so.
And it's capped at 900,000 in total loan amount. But so what? I mean, that's a huge deduction that you get. So you get to deduct 30% of the interest paid on that $900,000 directly off of your taxes. And it's just an incredible thing when you think about rates of return. Getting a loan is using other people's money. It's leveraged investing that you cannot do. If you're renting, you're getting an adjustable rate mortgage, essentially, one that's only going to go up, and you're paying someone else's mortgage, helping them create wealth, not yourself. And so all of this crap I'm walking you through is stuff that I know most of you all do.
Well,
but I think
the people who listen on Tuesdays have been getting this for 2.5 years. That is for sure. It is lovely. I didn't know I was going to nickname you Mary Sunshine after this. That is a bit of a surprise. So thank you for that. It is, it's interesting because, again, we just came off of a drunken holiday of 2 years where loans fell from the sky and everything was beautiful and bliss, other than the fact that, it took 16 months to get a loan done or whatever. Anyway, and everyone was griping because they got, 2 5/8 instead of 2 1/4, because that's so terrible. So again, it's a time for re-educating ourselves, our borrowers, and helping people understand that you do not make a rate every month, you make a payment. Can people afford their payment? That really needs to be the focus. And I mentioned it to the CFPB last week. I am going to keep saying it because they drive, the regulatory agencies are like, oh, shop, it's rate. I'm like, no, it's payment. And when you're talking about affordability, which now we're being told is 30% of your, monthly income should be housing debt, which is absurd in a lot of cases. Payments. Can you afford your house? Can you afford to live there? That's it. That's what we need to focus on, and get out of your house and go be a real loan originator and advisor. That's it.
And there's still some great programs out there. I mean, I was helping a client last week, just using an FHA. They're trying to buy a 2-unit place, using the rent to help them qualify. And I was amazed, for the little amount of money that they made per year, they were able to afford something.
Okay, so I have a question about the, so as far as the consolidation goes, so we are all hearing, about wholesalers and brokers and, longtime people who've been in the industry for, getting out of the mortgage industry. There is Suburban in, where is that, Texas or something? Places that have been around forever, maybe Arizona, I could be wrong. Isn't Texas and Arizona are the same thing, right? No? Anyway, so we've got all these layoffs going on, and it's really hard for people to hear that and go, oh my God, am I going to be safe? So you're, again, the best advice is make yourself an asset, right? Don't just sit in your house and think that the phone's just going to ring and that it's going to fall out of the sky anymore. That's unrealistic, and it's not what we are made of.
Yeah, and Audrey, look, there are companies that are going to spiral out of this market because they're not. Their structure of their business model is not survivable. Better.com was a classic case of that. But honestly, I think Loan Depot is in a spiral right now, and I'm not sure where they'll end up here. Traditional retail loan originators that do it I hate this. I never want to say the old fashioned way because we don't do it that way. We use a combination
Yep.
of our personalities and relationship building skills with technology.
Yes.
But in the end of the day, it is a bit of those that can go out and work and build relationship with realtors are the business model that will survive. And we're going to see lots of contraction. We're seeing wholesalers shut their platforms down because it's a bloodbath on the price war, right? I mean, UWM let it off, and then a couple of others pledged to match, and no others just don't have the stomach to deal with that bloodbath. And so we'll just have to see how that washes out. But if you're a retail originator and you're good at what you do, and you're not living at home or trying to make a living on the internet, Audrey, which is the point you were making, and you get out and make calls and you use your telephone, and try some of the techniques we just talked about here, you're going to succeed ahead of others, and you're going to be very desirable in the marketplace.
Well, and don't we all just want to be desirable? Just a quick note from our little friends at the CFPB, which, by the way, I just loved last week so much. It was so interesting talking to them and having them. I mean, I'm sure you remember better than we do back when they first rolled out. If you even got them to show up to an event, they would not talk to you. You couldn't have your cell phones even in the room. It was completely closed. They read from slides, and we were the enemy, right? So we have come a long way since then. Where
McCardle's a good guy.
He's a great guy. He's a really.
He's good to
I'm
have
thinking
in
of
his-
Paul. What was his name? Paul Mondor. Oh, he did not
Well,
like.
Mondor was from the Federal Reserve long before the CFPB, and Mondor's always had that personality. But the CFPB has had other people like Mark. Mark Scudis came in during the Trump administration and stayed on through the Biden regime, which tells you how apolitical mortgages is, and I think it's a good thing. But there were other guys who had Mark's job. Mark's job is to communicate with the public. Mondor was the same person at the Bureau as he was at the Fed, so I would just leave it at that.
Yeah, real fun at parties, I'm guessing.
Yes, exactly.
So the CFPB issued a statement last week, and this is what it says. So just make sure that you are paying attention, because this is right there with the IRS and Social Security, who are also not going to call you. And so this week we confirmed that scammers are using the CFPB's employee names and imagery to try and steal your money. We've heard from people, specifically older adults, who are defrauded thousands of dollars from scammers pretending to be with the CFPB. Now, like, what random person gets a notice saying, hey, the CFPB wants your money, and you're not even in the mortgages industry and you give it to them? But that's a whole nother conversation. But just as a reminder, and again, these are things that you can use if you wanted to do a quick little 30-second public service announcement on Facebook, where you do a video and say, hey, just a reminder, and throw the IRS and Social Security in there and remind people, don't fall for this crap, right? So the CFPB does not want your money this way. They just want your money when they come to do an exam and discover that you're doing all sorts of other shit. Oh, excuse me. God, I'm usually so good about this. I apologize. Anyway, so can we speak for just a quick moment about me and Jerome Powell, who we have relationship issues that are definitely going to need therapy at some point, because this boy cannot shut his mouth. He keeps coming out and saying like in June, when he's like, just take a pause, I'm buying a house. At what point did the Fed decide that they're going to tell people when they should or shouldn't buy a house? Now they've gone from the economy's fine, inflation's fine, don't worry, to there's no soft landing anymore. It's pain, pain, pain. Like literally, they just like beat the word pain to death. And so with all that being said, kids, this is going to be a slow news week. We are already having a rate bloodbath today. So just buckle up and figure out what you're going to do for your marketing plan instead. And don't focus on that. We have inflation numbers coming out next week. It's anyone's guess what that's going to look like. And so how do you, Dave, how do you take what the Fed is saying to us and turn that into something that doesn't, require medication?
I'm just going to put this out there. I think it's real easy to tell other people how they should have done their job in hindsight. I will give you, with full disclosure, my daughter works at the Fed and is in the communications department and writes comments for Powell. So,
What?
but,
Can we have her on? I
But-
want her on here. Bring her with you
but,
next time.
But all I would tell
Oh my
you
God, that's
is,
fascinating. What do they
all I
think?
would tell you is, I joined the administration in a very unique period as well, like the Great Recession. It was unprecedented, and it was a period of time when I'm stalling because I want to pull up the photo. It was a period of time when we didn't know what we were doing. We were inventing things out of thin air. This is a
When are you?
this is a meeting in the Roosevelt Room. It's the president's conference room in the White House, right across from the Oval. You can see Obama with his back to us in the middle chair. I'm on the corner over there with the blue tie, and I still have some black hair left.
Oh,
Obviously reaching for some important point, but I will tell you, when you get to the point where you're in an unprecedented economic environment and you have to invent things that have never been invented before, things called HAMP and HARP and all sorts of modification programs and waterfalls. If you're a mortgage servicer, you know what I mean by that. It was some stuff worked, some stuff didn't, and you figure things out, and you maybe overcorrect in some areas, and others maybe don't do enough. The pandemic event was one that I think must have been pretty mind-numbing. It certainly caught the Trump administration off guard, and ended up making some statements which I'm sure they wish they could pull back from. And likewise, the Biden administration then came in. Obviously, Powell bridged both of those administrations and came in with the most incredible amount of quantitative easing in March of 2020, which you all recall. That's when all the hedge pipelines blew up and margin calls were occurring and everything else that was going on that was freaking out all of your bosses or perhaps the correspondent lenders you sold to.
Yep.
And it was a really challenging time because the Fed came in overly strong. Obviously, the expectation was that when you shut down the U.S. economy, nobody goes to work. The President Trump called for a national shutdown on March 21. It was the day of the national shutdown. And then obviously that carried forward. How do you anticipate what that's going to mean to the economy? People can't make rent payments. Okay, forbearance. You no longer can foreclose. And you can't kick people out of their rental properties. And we had the forbearance program and then the rental immunity. How do you anticipate how bad that's going to be?
right.
Fed definitely overreacted. Congress did too, in a bipartisan way, with virtually almost no votes, like a handful, 12, I think.
Yeah.
They passed two pieces of mega legislation that gave all these checks, and the PPP program, which was abused by mortgage company owners that I know firsthand, members of Congress. I mean, all sorts of people abuse the PPP program. And so, but you don't know, and anybody who's studied economics in college, you all remember micro and macro, which were probably the two most important classes I took. And in a recession, when you have a credit contraction, what you have to do to keep the gears of the economy moving again is you just throw money out there. You throw money everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And the goal is just to keep the gears of the economy moving when the natural market is not functioning correctly. And so we call these fundamentals and technicals. And when the fundamentals stop, you need to adjust your technicals to get the economy flowing again. And that's what they did. It was an overcorrection, got the economy too damn hot. The moment we all came out in 2021 began, and definitely in 2022, but it was really late 2021 when we started taking off masks and everybody started going on vacation. And suddenly we don't have people working the airplanes, and everybody wants to buy homes now. And, everybody's traveling, everybody's going back to restaurants, and the restaurants can't staff up as quickly. It's much harder to staff up than it is to fire people. So all this stuff hit us suddenly, and none of this could have been anticipated. Now, I honestly compare that to the Great Recession, where I cut my teeth in an administration, meeting with the president every couple of weeks, working with all the other agencies, the Fed and Treasury. And Tim Greitner, the Treasury Secretary at the time, is still a good friend. He's one of my clients, his hedge fund in New York is. And so but it was amazing what you go through in a time like this, and you don't get it right. It's virtually impossible. Powell did what a head of monetary policy essentially thought he should do. Yellen supported him, and she was the former Fed chair. And now we're dealing with that response. And unfortunately, the economy got too hot too quickly. We're still not fully recovered from that. We're going to start seeing that, and you'll see it in inflation numbers that come out. It'll still be high, but it'll be less.
Yeah.
And so what you got to remember is we got to get back to closer to 2%. And that's what the Fed's going to target, which is why you're going to see at least 2 more pretty sizable increases before the year's over. But that's just where we're headed. At the end of the day, we can bitch and moan about that, because politicians will always make bad decisions. Politicians want to spend money, and they want to legislate, and they want to set policy. They don't go there just to sit on their thumbs. And so whether you like them or not, whatever party, they both want to do the same thing. And they both do it when they're in the majority. So we're just in the situation right now. Everybody signed up on both sides of the aisle through 2 different administrations, threw a boatload of money at this thing, and we overcorrected, but no one could see that the response back was going to be so dramatic and so fast.
Well, I think, again, my gripe is not I thought the CARES Act was mostly brilliant, not all of it, but mostly. I feel like they really took a lot of the lessons from not the Great Recession, Dave, the really screwed up, horrible, lot in the mortgage.
Oh yeah, you're the one.
Yeah, I'm the one.
Said, don't call it the Great Recession.
Great, like 15 times I'm going to put you in timeout when we're done today. But anyway,
thank you, Jill. Jill James is out there making some good comments. Hey, by the way, Audrey, you didn't want to call it the Great Recession, but we did call it the Great Depression too. So great means big.
I understand what it's supposed to mean. I'm just pointing out that's a bunch of crap. So anyway, I think it's also very interesting with these job numbers. 82% of the job gains came from 16 and 19-year-olds in the last jobs report. I mean, when you start to break down some of these reports, it's going to be interesting to see how it all works out. I would love to understand, maybe your daughter could help me, like the messaging, it's deliberate. I know it's deliberate. So I know they're saying these things for a reason and in a certain way for a reason. I just don't understand some of it. So anyway.
Well, I can tell you that in some of Paulson's remarks, not the most recent, but in some of his remarks, Powell, excuse me, screwing up my Treasury secretaries and my Fed. But anyway, if you look at the housing data, 30% of the economy, of the GDP, is based on housing, not just home sales, but goods and services purchased after the acquisition of a home. And so if you don't slow housing down, you don't deal with this inflation problem.
Yeah,
and
I gotcha.
It doesn't need to go negative. Remind you.
Right.
Mind you, remember we were running 18% per annum home price appreciation. 18 freaking percent.
Yep.
That's completely unsustainable and out of check. The home price appreciation should run pretty close to wage inflation. And if both can stay in the low single digits, you have a really nice equilibrium that creates a healthy economy. And the economy was too hot and housing was leading it. And so, and refinancing was leading it, because refinancing put too much disposable income into the hands of consumers, allowing them to go out and take trips and buy goods and services. So all of this needed to stop.
Yep.
And they're doing it by interest rates, but housing has to slow down, and that's what we're seeing.
So
it doesn't mean it doesn't mean it goes negative. CoreLogic just came out with their home price appreciation report today. So if you get the CoreLogic data, it's out today. It's free. Go to the CoreLogic site and pull it up. But they're forecasting 3% appreciation next year.
Yeah, everyone is. Everyone's forecasting positive appreciation.
That's great.
Overall,
Yeah.
it is great. All right, kids, I cannot believe how fast these hours go sometimes more faster than others, Dave. And this was no exception to that. You are absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. And I appreciate that you come on here, you give us facts, data, history, but also like a reason to get off our butts and go do our jobs. So with
Yep.
that, we will look forward to seeing you again soon now that you're going to remember who the hell I am. And next week we have Barry Habib joining us.
Don't worry. I'll remember Kevin.
Yeah, I know. I know. I'm the most memorable one.
Yes. Okay. His job is to
Just
look
kidding,
pretty.
Audrey.
No, his job is to look pretty and control me, apparently. So that's what we've been told. So anyway, Barry Habib next week. We'll see you then, guys. In between, go do something to increase your market share and be positive and don't look at the rates in the bond market today. All right. With that, mwah, have a great week.
Thank you, Dave.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Dave.
See ya.
Bye.